Hello there, welcome back to the Social Canvas with me, Carol. Today we are going to do a Father's Day special as part of my week of Father's Day special paintings. This one is called Fly Past for Dad, and it's this lovely traditional plane, biplane I believe it is, and of course you can put your message in the clouds as you wish. So I'm really excited to get started. So I'm going to run through some things that you're going to need. So if you haven't got them already, then you can pause this, go and get them and come back. So I'm going to first of all say this is a painting. I generally draw first of all, but I am going to ask you to find a ruler and a pencil and a rubber just in case you need one. So this is what we're going to start out with. Okay, so, and the other thing you're going to need, if you're using acrylic paints, is some water, is a palette. I've got a tear-off palette here, and some paintbrushes, and of course the all-important kitchen towel, paper towel, to dab your brushes on or clean them with. So I've got a bunch of different brushes here today. You can use whatever you've got. Anything will work for this, but of course I'm going to tell you what I'm using anyway. So I'm using slightly smaller surface than this one is painted on. This is painted on canvas paper. I'm using a small canvas, which I believe is a 10 by 14 inch canvas. So it's slightly smaller, so you will have to adapt according to the size. I'm doing it on the sideways rather than up. But of course, if you wish to do it that way, then you can do that. You can do your plane at any angle you like as well. If you feel like it wants to go up in the air, then you can do that. It's easier to paint it straight, but you know what? If you want to be brave, then do that. So first of all, I'm going to paint the background, and I'm going to use my angle brush. But if you've got a flat brush or a round brush or a filbert brush, any brush will do that's big, as long as you can cover the back. So the paints that I've got today are only 4 basic colours actually. I've got a little bit of black, some red for the plane. If you'd like to paint your plane in a different colour, then go choose a different colour. I've got a blue, which is a Winsor blue, royal blue. Any blue that you've got will be fine. And some white. Usually I need a little bit more white, so I will probably add to that throughout the session. So with your large brush, just give it a little dip in the water. I just dab it off a little bit on my paper. I'm going to grab first of all some white and a little bit of blue. I don't want too much because I think I'm going to graduate this slightly from lighter to darker blue. So let's see how this comes out. If you're working on an easel like me, you'll have to lift your canvas up, but don't worry about that. And I'm starting off just going side to side with that paintbrush. If your paints, some people sometimes don't put enough paint on their brush, and some people don't put enough. So it's getting that right balance there. And also a little bit of water back into your paint. Always put your paintbrush back into the paint after you've got a little bit of water. That will help it flow. And if you don't want to see the brush marks, then, because you see right now, you could perhaps see the brush marks here, then use your brush on its side and smooth it from side to side like this, and you'll find that the brush marks will disappear. So let's just go easy on that. Just from side to side. The paint will go right up into the bottom part of your brush, so just tap that right on the side there, and you'll see it's coming off, because you don't want that sitting up there when you change colour. Okay, so that's nice and smooth, like so, slowly. And then I'm going to add just a tad more blue. So I'm going to get slightly darker as I go up. I need a little bit of water in there, a little bit more white and blue in there. Mix it well on your palette. It doesn't matter if your blue becomes a different shade in places, because of course the sky is patchy anyway. It's not always one colour. or one-tone blue. So again, just make sure you go from side to side, get off all that paint, make sure you don't leave any brush marks. So I'm just going to gradually get slightly darker by adding a tiny bit more blue each time, but make sure you mix that up nice and good on your palette. I'll put that back on my easel now. If you're working flat, as I always tell people, sometimes it's a lot easier in a way working flat because your easel doesn't keep moving around if you need to lift it up. I'm just going easy along there. A little bit more blue in with my mixture. And I'm going to straddle the lines each time. I don't want a light blue line and then a dark blue line and then another dark blue line. I want to mix it together. So each time you put your paint on and it's a different shade, go over that line. Don't just start at the line, but go over it and then just mix it in. Even if you have to go back in, to the bottom part of that, just go back over. Okay, a little bit more blue. You may need to add some white occasionally just to mix it in, but the key is just to keep building up. The reason why I'm going to a darker blue, of course, is because I want the clouds to stand out, so when we put our message in. Make sure you get all that canvas covered. A bit more blue, a bit more white. Nice and smooth, nice and smooth. Making sure and if you go over if you're going from side to side on the sides of your brush, if you go very lightly, like you're barely touching the canvas, it will really smooth out any brush strokes. So again, what I'm doing on my palette is I'm making sure I get that off mixed in from the very bottom of the roots of the brush there. Okay, getting up there. We are going to have to wait for this to dry in between. Now the good thing about acrylic paint is it dries super quick, so you shouldn't have to wait too long. But if you put the paint on thick, then it will take longer to dry, of course. If you put it on like a wash, which is not much paint at all, then it will be dry pretty much on touch. So I'm going to get slightly darker now by just grabbing more of the blue that I've got here and not really any more white. I do need some water though because it's going to get dry. I've gotten a little bit darker, but I'm trying to blend it with the colour underneath by just going back into that colour a little bit. So I don't want that line, so just keep going over any line that you see forming and you'll see it disappears and then you get this nice smooth tone going on there. Of course, this is even, not just for your dad, but maybe grandpa would like this. Your granddad. I think men like planes in particular. Planes, trains, automobiles, cars, whatever. That's their kind of toys, isn't it? So maybe you've got a lovely granddad that would like a painting like this too. Or anybody, father figure, anybody really would love a personalised painting. Right, nearly finished my little bit. If you're working on a bigger canvas, then you're going to take longer than me. So if you need to pause me at any point, you can do that till you've got to this point. So I'm just smoothing over the top As I said, this does dry quick, so you have to really go over the bits that you've just gone over, because if you try and go back down to this, it's probably almost dry and it's very hard. Well, you can't blend it really. Once it's dry, it's like it's done. You can't blend anymore. I mean, it doesn't have to be perfect, so don't worry about that. This on my practice sheet is not very perfect. So now I'm just waiting for this to dry a little bit before we go on. But in the meantime, what I'm going to do is I'm going to give this brush a little wipe off. So as I said, I've got some kitchen towel here. I'm going to dip it in the water, but I'm not going to dip it right into the bottom. And then I can just take off most of that paint. It's always a good idea to clean your brushes and don't let them sit around with paint on, because if they sit around with paint on, they'll dry up very, very hard and you'll have a problem getting any of it off. So it might take a few goes of getting the blue off, because as I said, the larger the brush, the more paint sits in it and the harder it is to. And now I'm just dipping it right in the bottom of my water thing, because as you can see, it's nearly all the way off. In time I get this clean. I don't need this at the moment, so I'm going to put that down. I'm going to go choose the next one that I'm going to be doing. So next we're going to start on the plane, but as I said, I'm going to wait for this to dry. You will need a smaller detail brush just to do the outline. So any will do. I've got one here that's a Daler-Rowney Graduate. It's number 4 brush, and it's called a round. So anything like that would work. It's just quite small. But if you've got the pack that we sell on our website, which is the short handle wooden ones, there's a very small one. I think there's one up from that might work as well. An angled brush, that's a very small one as well. I think that's a number 4. See how small that is compared to the other one that I was using. That was a number 8, and this is a number 4, so it's much smaller. It's to get an even line when we paint the lines. Smaller is better in this case. I may have to switch between mine. Sometimes it's experimentation. You have to try one, and if it's not working, it's getting blobby, then you need a smaller one. But the only thing with the smaller brush is it doesn't take much paint, so you will have to keep putting your brush back in every time you do a line. So let's see. Quick way, by the way, to get a canvas dry, if you're waiting for it to dry, is either fan it around. You can lift it up and fan it like this, or you can even, if you're really desperate, you can get a hairdryer and dry it that way. So you know, that works. But I can see mine is still slightly wet, so I'm not going to touch it quite just yet. So this is where I'm going to suggest, if you have a ruler and a pencil, grab it right now. This is really just to get the angle of our plane, you know, perfect as perfect can be. So what we're going to do is we're going to draw the line at the top like so, and then maybe draw an angle down and an angle from that one. So that's the only bit we're going to need the ruler for, but it does come in handy if you want it straight. But if you don't want to and you want to hand paint it, then of course go ahead and do that. It's just nice to have that. So let's see. It's getting touch dry. So just the area that I used last, of course, was a little bit wet. So this allows you to catch up a bit at least while it's drying. If paint comes off, then you're going to leave. You're going to have a hole there. So try not to touch it like me. I'm just doing it because I pretty much see it's dry, but I just don't want to do too much. Okay, so I'm going to have a go now. So because mine's smaller than this one, I've got to be careful how big I want my plane. Because if I do it too big, I'm not going to see the cloud so much around it. So I'm going to start out about here, and then I'm going to mark out where I want the end of my plane to come with my brush, and I'm just going to do a line along to where I want the end of my plane to come. So I think for me, I'm going to do it about there. So that's probably halfway across my canvas. I've drawn the line. So again, that's up to you, of course, how far across or how big you want your plane. So I've just drawn that line, and the only reason why, as I said, is just so I have a guide. And then before I actually go and do another one, I'm going to highlight that with a little bit of black. So I'm taking some water, putting a small detail brush, a round brush, into some black, so it's not too dry, but it's not too wet, because I don't want it dripping. And then I'm going to start right along here. I'm going to leave enough room for my, and I'm going to draw paint, I should say, that line across. Doesn't have to be perfect, so if your line's not, don't worry too much about it. I'm going to come across here, and then as I get to where he's sitting, I'm going to make a little dip, or a U, a small U, like so. You can see that. And then I'm going to keep coming across. And then I'm going to stop about there, because it's not as long. Obviously, it's about halfway along as the front area is. And then at the back here, I'm going to make sort of a rounded bit like that. Okay. I'm going to leave a small gap for where I want my, I'm not sure, a wing, I guess. And then I'm just going to put a little mark here like so. And then on this end, I'm going to round this out where my propeller's coming. Like that. Okay. Then you can either freehand this, or you can do the same thing with the ruler. That's just so you've got, so you don't want to come too far down. So just around past the cockpit there. Whoops, I'm doing it with my, I'll put my brush down a minute. So I'm going to get my pencil out. Don't want it to come too low, so you've got to get your angle about right. So I would say I'm going to come to about there. You might not see my pencil mark, but at least you can get an idea. So past the cockpit, just below, and I'm going to stop there. I'm not going to draw the circle. And again, on this angle, I do want it to come meet that, so I'm just going to draw a small line. Again, I'm going to stop about there. So you'll see it when I paint it in. I'll come slightly down. Actually come down a little bit further than my line because it wasn't quite angled enough. So I'm coming slightly under my pencil line. This is where you can make adjustments if you wish. Like so. And then I'm going to draw this, paint this line, or it's kind of an oval shape. Like so. Got that in, hopefully. So that's a great start. And then while I'm waiting for this to dry, because I don't want to lean on it while it's wet, I'm going to do this little wing out the back here. And again, that's just like a sort of a rounded shape at the back here. Jolly good. So I'm going to, as I said, I'm going to wait for that to dry. So while I'm waiting for that to dry, I'm going to take, again, don't forget to make sure your brush has got a little bit of moisture in it before you put it back into your paint. I'm going to do the wheel at the back. So again, it's a little stick coming straight down, and then it's angled slightly back, like so. And then of course the make sure I'm not leaning on the paint here. I think it's dry, well and truly. And I'm doing a smaller one at the back, of course, than the one at the front. So you're just doing a circle. And then I'm going to fill in except the middle. You can fill it all in if you want to, and you can always put the white dot on afterwards, but I'm just going to leave the middle of it so I don't have to worry about how the white's going to show up. And then underneath this bit here, it's coming out at a, so you've got a line coming at a slight angle, It's a slightly thicker one, this one, so you can go a bit thicker. And then the wheel, of course, is slightly bigger as well. So you can come bigger with the wheel on this one. Of course, any plane enthusiasts out there are probably going to say it's not how it should be, but I think this is pretty close. Again, I'm leaving the center because I'm going to put the white and then the black dot in the middle afterwards. Okay. And then on my propeller, I want to make sure you see my propeller is going to be quite close to my edge, but that's okay. I'm going to make a line out coming round where my nose is. And then again, there's kind of a little pointy bit coming out in the middle, like so. I'm just going over my line again. I know I've got a line there, but I'm going to paint over that with white, so I'm not too bothered about that bit. And now with the propeller, obviously this is something, again, if you prefer to get your ruler so that you've got a straight up and down propeller, you can always mark it out where it needs to be. So if you want it about the same length, then you can measure it out exactly. But if you want to freehand it, pre-painted in, you might want this bit closer to you like I do. So this is a slightly, obviously it's not a straight line, so where you've got the line, you're going slightly out from that line each side. This might take a little bit of concentration, I know. And the same thing again, I'm coming out from my line a bit. So it's a guideline where you're going out and into, basically. And a little bit more paint on there. Sit with small brushes, they don't hold much paint. Whoops. I try and lean on my canvas with the rest of my hand so I get a steady hand, but I know that's not easy for a lot of people. Alright, so we've got the basic shape in there. And so we've just got to do the top bit now. This should all be dry. Good thing it is, because I'm rubbing over it, right? And so I'm trying to make this perfectly, obviously, above. Again, if you want to use a ruler to make sure you've got that in line, it doesn't matter if it's slightly out of line, to be honest. And also, if you'd rather draw the lines in like those lines as well, then just come up from slightly above the side there, make your line up like that, and then the other side the same. Whoops, mine's not in the middle either, actually. It's a good thing, you see, I'm marking it out, because I realise now I've not done it quite in the middle. I'm not going to worry too much about that. So if you want to do your lines first, you can, but I think it's easier to do the top and then put your lines in, because then you're not leaning on your wet paint. So I'm going to try my best to make this about the same size. So make note of the one underneath. This one might be slightly wider. This was kind of like it looks a bit like a jelly bean shape or something. It's slightly different from the underneath. I don't know why. Maybe that's just the way it was when I found the picture of it. Okay, so now I can see my lines are not right in the right place, but at least it gives me a guide as to how straight I want it. So I'm going to come slightly over from my line down, like that, and then I'm trying to make it equal this side. And don't worry if you've got a pencil mark in there, because once you paint over it, you won't see that pencil mark anyway. Now, here's one thing I will say. I've made one mistake here. I really should have painted my plane before I put the lines in. So I'm not going to put my crisscross in right now. I'm going to actually just make my man in my cockpit first of all. So if you haven't got two lines yet, I would leave it a minute. So my man is sitting back in his cockpit here. I'm just going to do an oval head bit of a neck. He's leaning back in his seat. You can see his body like that, just at the top. And then you can have it, if you want to show his hands reaching the wheel, you can. I'm just doing a line where the wheel is. And you can always, put his arm out like that if you wish, but you don't have to. And if you want to put a hat on him or a scarf, let's say he's wearing a scarf, the old-fashioned style, and he's got it flowing out there. There you go. It makes him a little bit more authentic, doesn't it? Okay, so now we've got most of the plain section in. The only thing I haven't done is the vents there at the top. So I am going to wait and do those after I've painted the red. So now with the red, it depends on, again, the size of your canvas as to which brush to use. I'm going to use my smaller angle brush, which is this one. I'm going to make it wet. Now, to make red show up, sometimes you need a touch of white in it. So if you do red, do bear that in mind. Any colour, really. So I'm going to take some red to the side. Only a little tiny bit of red, though. Not very much. What it does, it just helps the coverage. And even if you've got it a little bit too pinky red, you can go over it again with just red, and then it will stand out. So, because it's, when you've got a red on top of the blue, it sort of doesn't quite cover as well as it could. So you can cover up your lines a little bit if you want to as you go round. Obviously, I'm going to be careful not to go over that line there. And the small detail brush might work for you better. Of course, when you get out into the bigger bit, you can just go for it. There's a close-up work. I have to put my glasses on, so I'm going to just put those on. And I can see a bit better now. Take your time in going around each section here. You don't have to hurry that. Just a little bit more water and a little bit more paint as I'm going along. Maybe you want to paint your, obviously if you're painting it blue, it's going to have to be a completely different blue. But if you want to paint it yellow, again, remember to put a little bit of white in with your yellow first of all. Or you could just paint it white and then paint over it the colour that you wish. Because if you paint it white first, any other colour on top will stand out much better. So I kind of like the red, white and blue effect of the plane, but this is up to you. When you're coming up to the line, just, be careful when you go and buy it so you're not painting over it. Otherwise, if you do paint over it, it's no big thing. You can always paint it back in once it's dry. That's why the angle brush is kind of easier to use it on its angled part to go right up to that line, but of course it would have been much easier to paint the whole plane in before putting the lines in, but I get too excited and get going and realise, oh no, I should have done that first. So right, bit more water. Always remember to get just a touch of water and back in that paint, just so it flows nicely. Maybe harder to get in these little bits here with this brush, but you could either go to a smaller brush or just be very careful and use your brush at a different angle maybe to get in there. I'm obviously not painting the end because we've got that white. The nose. Do know the correct term for that. So yeah, if you're struggling with this bit here, you can either come from the top and just angle that brush in, or you can change brushes. I don't really want the blue to show through, so be very careful with that bit. Lovely. Again, if you want it a darker, a brighter red, you can always wait for that to dry and then go over it again with another coat. I'm going to do this one first so I don't put my hand in the paint at the bottom. As I said, if you've got a thick line, if you've painted a thick line, and you can always go right up to the line and take out some of the thickness of that line by painting over with the red. Lovely. And then that bit at the bottom. Okay, right, next is the nose. I can't do my white lines here until that's completely dry, so that will come at the end, so I'm just going to leave that. So I'm going to wash that brush off and go straight to some white. You will want a smaller brush to get inside the propeller there. Ooh, got the right name for that, right? Propeller. I do think that the nose here will need 2 coats of white, so I'm going to do one and then wait for that to dry and then probably do another one after that. And I'm coming over my line that I painted there because I don't want that to show. And while I've got this, I'm going to do the middle, blob of my, I'm going to do this one too. Come back and put the black line in. See how that shows up nicely against the background? Alright, so be careful when you do want a small brush for your propeller, so make sure you've got a very small detail brush. The one from our package actually is a very tiny brush, so you could try using that. I'm going to see if this will work for me. So just take your time inside that. Again, you might need to go over this twice, so I always tell people that, you know, the thicker quality paint, the medium to heavy bodied acrylics cover better, but they're also about 4 times as expensive as the cheaper ones, so it's okay to just use the cheaper ones and coat them a couple of times. Depends on how much patience you have, I guess. Alright, so I'm going to wait for that to dry. These bits should dry quite quick, so I'm going to go over that one again. And that one's, I think, is okay. Voila! Lovely. Let me see if that is dry enough. Because I put it on quite thin, it should be dry quite quick. Wonderful! I'm happy with that, so we'll wait for the end of that. Now, woo, clouds! We're doing some clouds. Any brush will do, but a big fluffy brush would be great. So if you have a big fluffy brush, I don't have one to hand, but let me see. I've got this one, which is a sort of a round, a very large round. It's a number 10. That would work. If you've got our short handled ones, this one would work, which is a sort of a, it's not a round as in a complete round, it's a flat round, but that will work as well. I'm going to try this one and see if it works for me. So don't make sure you've got no other paint colour on it, because you want to make sure the clouds stand out. So we're just grabbing some white, like so. I always take it to the side because I want to coat my brush kind of both sides like so. So this is up to you how you want to do clouds. If you want to do them in the shape of a heart, you can. If you want to do the round circles that you see, you know, coming out the back of a plane, you can do that. Or you can just do however many clouds you want to write in. Don't worry about the writing because we're going to do that afterwards with a bit of blue. So right now I'm just going to put some random clouds in here and there. And with this I'm just going to dab on. I try and do circles with my brushes. Because, I mean, you know, clouds are kind of like that, aren't they? They're very fluffy. If you want soft edges, you can get your finger. You can make the edges nice and fluffy, soft, like that. Now, with clouds, you will have to go over them more than once with white because this white will sink in. So I'm going to do the top part more white than I am the bottom because I want my sign message to show up inside there a little bit. I think I might come out a little bit more with this cloud. It doesn't have to be perfectly round. Do bear that in mind. Clouds are not perfectly round. If you study them, you know, you will notice that. So I'm just bringing that one out a little bit. And of course, it depends on how many letters you put in. Maybe you already put an I, so you could have a very small, you know, cloud up there. And then if you put in love in the next one, you can make it slightly bigger. And, you know, it just depends on how many words you want to say. That's what I will say, is put in how many clouds you want as to how many words you want to put in them. So again, I'm putting a little bit more white in the top of my cloud because it tends to be a little bit that way if you stare at them and see them. So let's see. And they don't have to be at the same level, you know. They could be different shapes and sizes as well. So I'm just putting that one in there like that first of all. Again, might trail it out this way a little bit. Like that, and make the top a bit fluffier or a bit whiter. Sometimes you have to wait for it to dry as well if you want to. Don't want your finger marks in there, of course, so do be careful of that. Now this one's all over the place, I've decided. That one's coming out even further. I think I'm just going to make one here. You can put a U if you don't want to put Y-O-U, just a U, the letter U that is. That way you can put a smaller one here. And then I'm going to put a bigger one over here, which is going to be for my dad. Oops. A bit of dried paint in there. I'm going to wait for that to dry a bit, and I'm going to put a little bit more white in before I put any sign in it. So if you want soft edges as well, you just have to do very light strokes just to make them fluffier, softer. Alright, so I'm going to wait for those to dry a bit. And while I'm waiting for that to dry, I'm going to go back into my nose and give it another coat. That's better. Shows up a lot better now. And as I said, the more you carry on into a different one, you're going to find that this one will get dry a lot quicker. So You could probably go back in and put another coat if you want to back in there. As I said, just put another coat at the top of the cloud, because the clouds are a more dense tone at the top than they are at the bottom if you look at them. There might not be many clouds out today, but if you want to go out and study them, you'll see what I mean. And if it's not quite dry, the paint might come back off a little bit, so you'll know to leave it a little bit longer before you go ahead. And try not to get any other colour in with that white. If you have, I would get some more paint out before you don't want to mess it up with a different colour. So I need a little bit more white, so I'm going to squeeze a bit more out. Doesn't want to come out. Come on. There you go. Right. So just a little bit more in there. And then that's getting dry. I kind of like that. Let me see. Just this one a little bit on the top there. As you can see, I'm just doing the top mostly. And I'm softly going over because I don't want to see too many of my brush strokes. There. Okay, I'm going to leave that for now, and my next step is waiting for this to dry before I can go and do my white stripes. Again, you see I've made that mistake of putting those lines in because I'm going to see my white stripes. So, you know what, I'm going to go over those black lines and go back in them to do that. So, and again, if you want a straight line and you want to use a ruler, because this should be completely dry now, just make sure it is. Before you do that. If you want a completely straight line, again, I'm not going to do that because that's still wet, but it's best to just make the line out with your ruler before you do so. And I'm gonna, you can put as many stripes on here as you wish, 2 or 3 or 4, whatever. Okay. Let me try it and see. I'm going to use don't want my lines too thick, so this is where you be careful with which brush you're using. A thin brush is the best, and again, if you've got your brush that's had another colour on it, make sure that colour's completely wiped off before you use it again, because you don't want your lines. And this one, I like to sort of give it a nice flat edge by pulling it up like that, so that way I should get a better straight line. And when I put it into my paint, I don't plonk it into the big part of the paint. I sort of touch the side like this, and then I turn my brush over because I want it completely flat on both sides. If it doesn't work for you, you can use a small detail brush to do that with. Let me have a go. Again, I don't want to lean in my paint, so I'm going to be very careful here. See how this works for me. Doesn't work great, I have to say. So this brush is slightly separated on me at the end. So I've gone right over my black lines, as you can see. Don't worry though, it's not a problem if you do the same thing. In fact, I might do 3 lines and have them graduated like that. because the white doesn't show up great first time round as well. You might have to go over your lines slightly again. Doesn't matter if it's not perfect. Alright, so I'm going to wait for that to dry before I go back over my black lines and then put the cross in. But what I'm going to do is, as long as these bits are dry, or not that bit's dry there, I can put the little black dot in the middle. I'm going to take my small detail brush again, which is the small round brush. I'm just going to, again, I still do that with my brush just to get a nice point on it. And I poke it straight into the top of my black this time. And then I'm just going to, steadily put the black dot best I can in the middle. Like that. That shows up nicely now. Wonderful. So again, the grids at the top there, I think while I've got the small brush, I think I might go to the very small detail brush for the grids to see how they work out. So I'm putting some black on my very small detail brush. See how tiny this is? And then at the top, I'm going to just mark out 3 oval shapes. 1, 2, 3, like so. I'm going to leave that to dry. And now, as I said, that's pretty quickly dry. I think I might just use this small one that I'm still using to go back over my line here. It's easier at least to see where the line is. Like so. Try and make it the same thickness, of course. And voila, we got that in. Now all we have to do is a cross, like that. Wonderful. Again, if you want to wait for this to dry and then put, use your ruler to do a perfect cross and just get a small pencil line in there to do that, then you can. I'm going to wing it and try and go from one angle. So you're basically just going from the top right down to the bottom like that. So you know where to aim for. Alright. I know on this painting it's not just kids doing it. Hopefully it'll be some adults as well joining in. Alright. So that's pretty good. I like that. That's turned out okay. See how my red on this one is not as red as that one because I did not do another coat of red. But if you, as I said, don't like it at this point, you could touch it up red, but you're going to have to be very careful around your areas there. So I'm not going to do my little white bits on there until that's dry. So I'm now going to do some writing in the sky. I'm going to use my small round brush again for detail. So I'm just getting that and just giving it a nice... So I'm grabbing the blue that we had, so not too dark, sort of a lightish blue with a bit of white. So the blue with the white. This doesn't have to be perfect. You see how mine's kind of rough? So I've written it quite roughly in there. So I'm going to get the light blue first. As long as it's dry, because you don't want to, if it's still wet, you don't want to do it yet. So I'm just going to do my eye in here. Again, I'm just doing actually it's a little bit darker at the top, so let me grab a little bit more blue. Trying to match the tone underneath there, so it looks like it's just showing through. So a little bit darker maybe at the top. And I'm going to do my eye. I'm just wiggling this. So when I say wiggling it, it's not a perfect eye. It's kind of like, looks like it's misshapen a little bit. Just wiggly, like that. And then when I go down to this one, I'm going to get a little bit lighter blue. And I'm going to wiggle this. A bit more paint, because I've got a little bit too watery on that one. So I'm just wiggling that line. Wiggle, wiggle, wiggle. It does not have to be a perfectly formed, as long as you know it's a, you know, an L and an O and a V and an E, it doesn't have to be perfectly formed. I think I made it a little bit too dark in the end. I'll try and wiggle that a bit more so it's softer. Perfect. I'm going to put my U in here. Again, if you want to just do the letter U, you can just do the letter U. If you want to be different. All right, if it's not for Dad and it's for somebody in particular and you want to put his name in there, just put it. Or you don't have to put any name. You can say, I love you so much, or I love you, Granddad, or I love you, you know, maybe it's not for your dad. It's for somebody else. It's for a friend, a sister, a mother, or whatever. No, it doesn't matter. I'm just going to do Dad just because it's Father's Day, of course, but coming up. So I'm wiggling that brush. Wiggling it around. Perfect. Okay. So I did get that a little bit too dark, so I'm just going to go over it a little bit lighter. Just trying to match up the tones, but it was a little bit too dark. Okay, so back to the plane now. That bit should be dry to touch. So I'm going to put some white lines back in there. Again, small detail brush is what's required for that. For me, anyway. And given that small one, I'm going to get that. I'll try and give it a nice line there. Digging it straight in my white. Just a little bit on the end, like that. And then I'm just going to carefully. Oops. Doesn't matter if it's not perfectly in the middle. And you know, this is where you can personalize the plane as well. If you want to put somebody's name on the plane or a number on the plane, you know, that's again up to you. You know, if you wanted to make the scarf a different color, you know, like let's say he's got a red scarf on or a pink scarf. I'll just show you how to do that. I'm just going to show he's got a pink scarf on here. You can just put enough water on that to make it. Lots of possibilities of making it very personal to you. So you see now he's got a little scarf on it that you can actually see, and it's a different colour. Put a hat on him if you want. Like some planes have numbers on, don't they? So if you wanted to put a number on there and make it, I don't know where they usually hang out, but you could put a number on the back here, or you could put Dad on the plane too. You know, there's lots of possibilities, as I said. And this is where you can just play a little bit, because I'm pretty much done. But if there's any areas you want to go back over with a bit more paint, because you can still see through a little bit, then you know, this is where you get to just make your final touches on. And the other thing I will say is, if you want to put your name on here, like I love you, Dad, lots of love from, or love, you know, whatever your name is, then that's a fine time to do it as well. So many things to do, so many things you can do. In fact, I like this scarf here to stand out even, so I might even make it white. Lovely. See how that stands out much more. And or you can just sign your name or your initials at the bottom there. But that is about it. I hope you enjoyed that. just a reminder that if you are joining me and want to do another one for Dad that you haven't got round to, do let me know. I have One Cool Dog here. That's also available online, and just drop me a line, send me an email or a message if you want to do that one as well. If you've signed up for one, if you've signed up for one of the adult theme ones and you want to do another one as well, then let me know. But it was so nice having you today. Happy Father's Day to all those fathers out there, and I will see you again soon. Bye.